Okay, so let's talk about the square root property, completing the square, and solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So let's start talking about square root property. Square root property says if u squared equals d, so if you have this form of an equation, then u equals square root of d or u equals negative square root of d. This is very important because people tend to use just the positive part. But u can be also negative square root of d. So basically, in other words, u can be plus minus square root of d given that u squared equals d. So let's do a few examples to make sense of this. For example, if you have x squared equals 9, what can we have for x or what's the solution? Well, 3 squared is 9 and negative 3 squared equals 9. So basically, what happens using square root property, you can actually do the following. I'm just going to write it again, leaving a little bit of room. So you can square root both sides, but make sure you put this plus minus in front. So basically, x equals plus minus 3. So exactly what square root property says. So let's do a few more examples. Example 2. Let's say we have 4x squared equals 28. So first of all, I don't have just x squared, so I'm going to divide by 4 both sides. So we get x squared equals 7. So now using square root property, we apply square root and we put plus minus. So x equals plus minus square root of 7. How many solutions? 2 solutions. Another one, example 3. Let's say we have 4x squared plus 9 equals 0. So again, I want x squared by itself, so I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. 4x squared equals negative 9. Divide by 4 both sides. X squared equals negative 9 over 4. So x can be plus or minus square root of negative 9 over 4. So it's plus minus. Well, if we were in real numbers, we would say no solutions. But since we learned complex numbers, let's finish this problem using complex solutions. So this negative under the root, it's making an I outside. Square root of 9 is 3 and square root of 4 is 2. So just make it pretty, plus minus 3i over 2. So there are 2 solutions and they are complex ones. Okay, and let me do one more. 4x minus 3 squared equals 10. Okay, so this one is not just x squared, it's a quantity squared. So I'm still going to apply the same thing that I did before. I just copied again and leave some room. So I'm going to apply square root to both sides. Keep in mind, in front of the root, we have to put plus minus because there are 2 solutions going on there. So this 2 from here cancels with this 2, so we are left just with x minus 3. Equals plus minus square root of 10. So if we add 3 to both sides, we actually end up with x equals 3 plus minus square root of 10, which are 2 solutions. The first one is 3 plus square root of 10, and the second one is 3 minus square root of 10. But we can always write it in a compact form, plus minus. Okay, let's discuss B. Completing the square. Okay, so in order for us to complete the square, we have to remember this formula. A squared plus 2ab plus b squared equals a minus b squared. So the question is, if I give you just a piece of the left-hand side, what do you need to create a perfect square? Oh, sorry, here it's a plus b squared. So for example, if I have x squared plus 2x plus what is going to make it a perfect square? So you see, I have a, it's not my x. I have 2, and I have the a and the x. So what is our b actually? What should I have here that makes it b squared? So it's actually a 1. So it's 1 squared. That makes it x plus 1 squared. So what you actually have to have is a term squared, 2 times the first term times the second, plus the last term squared. So in order to find the third term, you have to divide by 2 and square. So if you remember this, you are all set. So all the time, divide the middle number by 2 and square it, and you're going to figure out the third term. So you see 2 divided by 2 squared. That's 1 squared, exactly what we wanted. Let's see another one. X squared plus 4x plus what makes a perfect square? Well, take the middle term, divide it by 2 and square it. So it's 2 squared, which is 4. So we would need a 4 here, and the actual perfect square is x plus 2, everything squared. Let's do a couple more. X squared minus 6x plus what equals? Well, I have this negative. So what's going to change? I'm going to have negative in between the terms in the answer. So take the middle one, divide it by 2 and square. So what's that? 3 squared. So I need to add a 9, and actually it's x minus 3 squared. So if you want to check, all you have to do is take this right hand side result and FOIL it. One more. X squared minus 7x plus what makes it a perfect square? Well, the middle term divided by 2 squared. So this time we have to add 49 over 4. Interesting, right? We have to do a fraction. So we have x minus 7 over 2, everything squared. So I hope this helps, but the best thing to do is to remember this formula. Divide by 2 the middle term and square, and you'll always find the third term. Okay, now why did we learn that? Because we want C to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. Okay, so let's say we have this example. Example 1. X squared minus 6x plus 4 equals 0. First step is keep just the terms in x. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides, and I'm going to get x squared minus 6x equals negative 4, and I leave a little bit of room. Okay, now I want a perfect square on the left-hand side. So I need to add something to both sides, right? So I need to add here half of the middle term squared. So I need to add a 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides, right? I have to balance my equation. So on the left-hand side, I have x minus 3 squared. In order for you to figure out the left-hand side, you have to master the formula a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. It's always a minus b squared. And if you have a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, it's a plus b squared. So on the left hand side, it's x minus 3 squared, and on the right hand side, it's 5, right? Negative 4 plus 9. Okay, now we learned how to solve these equations just a few minutes ago. So what do? We apply square root to both sides, keeping in mind that on the right hand side we have to put plus minus. So these 2 from the index with the power cancels, so there is no more square root. Plus minus square root of 5. I add 3 to both sides, and we get x equals 3 plus minus square root of 5. And I actually have 2 solutions. One is 3 plus square root of 5, and one is 3 minus square root of 5. But we couldn't do this without solving the quadratic equation. Because just imagine, what if somebody decided that they want to factor this problem? Well, do you know 2 numbers that have the sum negative 6 and the product 4? Where there are none in using whole numbers, because these are the 2 ones. If you add them and if you multiply them, they satisfy. But would you guess those? I don't think so. Example 2. X squared plus 4x. Well, let's do one that the leading coefficient is not 1. 9x squared minus 6x minus 4 equals 0. So the very first thing that you want to do is you want to have the leading coefficient 1. So we are going to divide every single term by 9. So we get x squared minus 6 over 9, well, I can simplify that by 3, so it's 2 over 3x, minus 4 over 9 equals 0. So why I decided by 9? Because the leading coefficient was 9. So now, I'm going to follow the steps. Add 4 over 9 to both sides because you want to get just x, the terms in x on the left-hand side, and 4 over 9. So now, I want to make this one a perfect square. So I want to add half of the middle term. So the middle term is 2 over 3. Half of that, so divided by 2, right? That's how we do half. And then square. So basically 2 over 3 times 1 over 2 squared is 1 over 3 squared, which is 1 over 9. So I want to add 1 over 9 to both sides. How did I get that 1 over 9? By dividing the middle term by 2 and square it. So now the left-hand side, it's x minus 1 over 3 squared. And the right-hand side is 5 over 9. So the square root property says, apply square root to both sides. Don't forget to put plus minus. So these 2 from the index cancels with the exponent, and we end up with x minus 1/3 on the left-hand side and plus minus square root of 5 over 3. You see what I did? I calculated square root of 9. So I'm going to add 1/3 to both sides, and the solution is x equals 1 over 3 plus minus square root of 5 over 3. Or I can actually write x equals 1 plus square root of 5 plus minus over 3. So how many solutions we have? We have 1 plus square root of 5 over 3, and we have 1 minus square root of 5 over 3. I hope this helps.